The room was silent, except for the frantic thumping of her heart. She pressed her back against the cold marble wall, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. The city lights of Dubai glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. But inside, the luxury suite felt like a gilded cage. She tried to steady her breath, but every inhale was sharp, shallow, panicked. Her hands shook as she dialed the number again. Voicemail. Always voicemail. She tried another. No answer. The battery icon flashed red, taunting her with its slow, inevitable drain. She glanced at the heavy door, half expecting it to burst open. Every sound in the hallway made her flinch. She replayed the last few hours in her mind, searching for a moment when things had still felt safe. When the world outside this room hadn't seemed so impossibly far away. She remembered the way the Sheikh had smiled at her, the way he'd promised her the world. Now, she was alone, her passport gone, her money out of reach, and her trust shattered. She tried to remember the hotel staff's faces, wondering if any of them could help, or if they were all in on it. She thought about her family back home, the friends who had warned her. The messages she'd ignored because she'd wanted to believe in something beautiful. Now, every shadow in the room felt like a threat. Every minute stretched out, heavy with dread. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, watching the city pulse with life below. Out there, people were laughing, celebrating, living their dreams. In here, she was trapped, desperate, and utterly alone. She whispered a prayer, her voice trembling. How had it come to this? How had a dream turned into this nightmare? And what would happen if no one answered her call for help? Her name was Anna. She was 42. With a gentle smile and eyes that always seemed to be searching for something just out of reach. She lived in a small town outside Manchester, in a house that felt too quiet since her divorce 3 years ago. The walls were lined with photos of her daughter, now grown and living in another city. And of Anna herself, younger and laughing. Before life had started to feel so heavy, Anna worked as a nurse at the local hospital. She was good at her job, steady hands, a calm voice, the kind of person people trusted with their pain. But when her shift ended and she walked out into the cold, grey evenings, she felt the weight of loneliness settle over her shoulders. She'd never imagined her life would turn out this way. The long nights, the empty bed, the sense that everyone else had moved on while she was standing still. She tried to fill the silence with little rituals. She'd make herself tea, light a candle, scroll through her phone, and watch travel shows on TV. She dreamed of places she'd never seen. White sand beaches, bustling markets, glittering cities where anything seemed possible. Sometimes, she'd close her eyes and imagine herself there. Far from the routine, the memories, the ache of what she'd lost. Her friends told her she was brave, that she'd survived so much already. But Anna didn't feel brave. She felt tired. She wanted to believe that something good was still waiting for her, that she hadn't missed her chance at happiness. She wanted to be seen, to be chosen, to feel special again. That longing made her vulnerable. Though she didn't see it at the time, she'd joined a few online groups for women her age, places where people shared stories, recipes, and sometimes, their heartaches. She'd started chatting with strangers just to feel a connection, to remind herself that she was still part of the world. She was careful, or so she thought. She'd heard the stories about online scams, about people pretending to be someone they weren't, but Anna believed she could spot a lie. She trusted her instincts. She told herself she was just looking for friendship, maybe a little adventure. Nothing more, but deep down, she wanted to be swept off her feet. She wanted someone to look at her and see more than a tired nurse, more than a woman who'd been left behind. She wanted to believe in magic again, in the possibility of a new beginning. So when the message arrived, from a man who seemed to have stepped out of one of her daydreams, she let herself hope. She let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance. She didn't know it yet, but that hope would become the thread that pulled her into a world she could never have imagined. And as she typed her first reply, her heart beat a little faster. Not knowing that everything she'd been searching for was about to be turned upside down. It started with a message that didn't look like any of the others. Anna was used to the usual greetings, "Hi, beautiful," or "How are you?" from men whose profiles were as empty as their words. But this one was different. The sender's name was Khalid Al-Mansour, and his profile picture showed a man in traditional Emirati dress, standing in front of a gleaming white palace. The message was polite, almost formal. "Good evening, Anna. I hope this message finds you well. I came across your profile and was struck by your kindness and grace. May I introduce myself?" Anna hesitated. She'd seen enough catfish stories to know that anyone could pretend to be anyone online. But there was something about the way he wrote. No pressure, no flattery, just a quiet confidence. She clicked on his profile. There were photos of him at charity events, riding horses, standing beside luxury cars. There were even short videos of him speaking at conferences, his accent smooth and his English flawless. It all looked so real, she replied, cautious but curious. "Hello, Khalid. Thank you for your kind words. What brings you to this little corner of the internet?" His answer was immediate, and it made her smile. He told her he was a businessman from Dubai, involved in real estate and philanthropy. He said he traveled often, but that he found Western women to be refreshingly honest and strong. He asked about her work, her dreams, her favorite places in the world. Over the next few days, their messages grew longer, more personal. Khalid seemed genuinely interested in her life. He remembered details, asked thoughtful questions, and never pushed for anything she wasn't ready to share. He sent her photos of his daily life, breakfasts on sunlit balconies, meetings in glass-walled offices, sunsets over the desert. He told her about his family, his love for horses, his belief in fate. Anna found herself looking forward to his messages. She'd wake up in the morning and check her phone before anything else. She told herself it was just a harmless distraction, a bit of fun to break up the monotony. But there was a thrill in it, a sense of being seen and chosen by someone extraordinary. Still, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered caution. She Googled his name, searching for any sign of a scam. She found articles about a Sheikh Khalid Al-Mansour, but the details were vague, the photos similar to the ones he'd sent. She asked him about the stories, and he laughed it off, saying that public figures always attracted rumors. He offered to video call, and when they spoke, she saw the same man from the photos. Handsome, poised, with a gentle smile and kind eyes. He never asked for money. Instead, he sent her small gifts, a book of poetry, a silk scarf, a box of dates from Dubai. Each package arrived with a handwritten note, full of warmth and affection. He told her she was special, that he felt a connection he hadn't known in years. He said he admired her strength, her compassion, her resilience. Anna's friends noticed the change in her. She seemed lighter, happier, as if a window had opened in her life and let in a fresh breeze. She told them about Khalid, but kept the details vague. She didn't want to jinx it, or invite skepticism. She wanted to hold on to the magic, just a little longer. But sometimes, late at night, she'd reread their conversations and wonder if it was all too perfect. She'd catch herself daydreaming about Dubai, about walking through golden halls and laughing under the stars. She wanted to believe it was real, that she was finally being chosen for something beautiful. Yet, beneath the hope, a flicker of unease remained. A quiet warning that dreams, especially the most dazzling ones, can sometimes lead you into the dark. The days blurred into weeks. And Anna's world began to revolve around Khalid. Every morning, she woke to a message from him. Sometimes a photo of the sunrise over the Dubai skyline, sometimes a voice note wishing her a beautiful day. His words were always gentle, always thoughtful, and always just what she needed to hear. He seemed to know when she was tired, when she was anxious, when she needed a little encouragement. It was as if he could read her heart from thousands of miles away. Then the gifts started arriving. At first, it was a bouquet of white lilies. Her favorite, delivered to her door with a card that read, "For the woman who brightens my mornings." Next came a delicate gold bracelet. The kind she'd admired in magazines, but never thought she'd own. The package included a note, a small token. "Until I can place something more precious on your wrist." Anna blushed as she read it, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Khalid's generosity didn't stop there. He sent her a silk scarf, hand-embroidered with her initials, and a box of rare chocolates from Belgium. Each gift was more extravagant than the last, and each one arrived with a message that made her feel cherished and adored. He told her he wanted to spoil her, that she deserved to be treated like a queen. Anna's friends were amazed, and a little envious. "He's like something out of a movie," one of them said, half joking, half serious. But it wasn't just the gifts. Khalid painted a picture of a life Anna had only dared to imagine. He spoke of moonlit dinners on private beaches, of weekends in Paris, of a home filled with laughter and love. He told her he wanted to show her his world, to introduce her to his family, to build a future together. "You are the missing piece in my life," he wrote one night. "I want to wake up every morning with you by my side." Anna felt herself falling, swept up in the fantasy. She started to imagine what it would be like to leave behind her small town, her lonely routines, and step into the life Khalid promised. She pictured herself in flowing dresses, walking through marble halls, her hand in his. She wondered what it would feel like to be truly loved, to be chosen above all others. Yet, even as she dreamed, small doubts crept in. Sometimes Khalid would disappear for hours, even days, claiming he was busy with business or family obligations. When Anna asked for details, his answers were vague. He never shared much about his work, only that it was complicated and required discretion. Once, she noticed that the handwriting on one of the gift cards looked different from the others. When she mentioned it, Khalid laughed and said his assistant must have written it for him. There were other moments, too. A story that didn't quite add up, a photo that looked strangely familiar, as if she'd seen it somewhere online before. But every time Anna's doubts surfaced, Khalid was there to reassure her. He'd call her, his voice warm and soothing, and tell her how much she meant to him. He'd remind her of all the plans they'd made, all the dreams they shared. "Trust me," he'd say. "Everything will make sense soon." Anna wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that she was special, that this was her chance at happiness. She told herself that every relationship had its mysteries, that love required a leap of faith. What if this was real? What if she let her fears get in the way of something extraordinary? The thought of missing out on the life Khalid promised was almost as frightening as the doubts themselves. So she pushed the red flags aside, clinging to hope, and waited for the next message, the next gift, the next promise of a future that felt just within reach. It was a rainy Thursday evening when Anna's phone chimed with a message that made her breath catch. Khalid's words glowed on the screen. "I can't wait any longer to meet you. Let me bring you to Dubai. I want to show you my world." Attached was a photo of a first-class plane ticket, her name printed in bold letters, and a reservation at one of the city's most exclusive hotels. The invitation felt like something out of a dream, a golden key to a life she'd only imagined. Anna stared at the ticket, her heart pounding. She read the message over and over, hardly believing it was real. Khalid's next message was even more intoxicating. "Everything is arranged. You'll be safe and comfortable. My driver will meet you at the airport. I want you to feel like royalty." He sent a photo of the hotel suite, marble floors, velvet drapes, a view of the Burj Khalifa sparkling against the night sky. Anna's mind raced with excitement and nerves. She called her daughter first, her voice trembling with a mix of joy and uncertainty. "He's invited me to Dubai," she said, trying to sound casual. There was a long pause on the other end. "Mum, are you sure this is a good idea?" her daughter asked, concern clear in her tone. Anna brushed it off, insisting that Khalid was different. That he'd never asked her for anything, that he'd only ever been generous and kind. Her friends were more direct. "Anna, you barely know this man. What if he's not who he says he is?" one warned. Another sent her a link to an article about romance scams, urging her to be careful. Anna felt a flicker of doubt, but she pushed it aside. She wanted to believe in Khalid, in the possibility of something wonderful. She told herself she was being smart. She'd keep her wits about her, stay in touch, and make sure everyone knew where she was. As the departure date approached, Anna's excitement grew, but so did her anxiety. She packed and repacked her suitcase, choosing her best dresses and a new pair of heels she'd bought just for the trip. She double-checked her passport, her phone charger, her travel insurance. She made a list of emergency contacts, just in case. But every time she started to worry, Khalid would send another message, another reassurance. "You have nothing to fear. I'll take care of everything." The night before her flight, Anna lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about all the stories she'd heard, women who'd taken chances, who'd found love in unexpected places. She wondered if she was being reckless or brave. She wondered if she was about to step into a fairy tale or a trap. But the thought of missing out, of letting fear hold her back, was too much to bear. At the airport, Anna's hands shook as she handed over her ticket. The first-class lounge was everything Khalid had promised: champagne, soft music, a sense of luxury she'd never known. She tried to relax, to let herself believe that this was the start of something beautiful. But as the plane soared into the night sky, a quiet voice inside her whispered a warning she couldn't quite ignore. She was flying toward a world she didn't understand, trusting a man she'd never met. And she had no idea what awaited her on the other side. The moment Anna stepped off the plane, the air felt different, warmer, scented with something sweet and unfamiliar. She followed the signs through the gleaming airport, her heart fluttering with anticipation and nerves. At the arrivals gate, a man in a crisp suit held a sign with her name. He greeted her with a polite bow and led her to a waiting car. Its leather seats cool and buttery soft beneath her hands as they drove through the city. Anna pressed her face to the window, wide-eyed at the world outside. Dubai was a place of impossible contrasts: glass towers rising from the desert, gold-tipped mosques, and neon lights that painted the night in every color. The car glided past luxury boutiques and fountains that danced to music. Anna felt like she'd been dropped into a movie, every detail more dazzling than the last. The hotel was even more breathtaking. A doorman in white gloves opened the door, and Anna stepped into a lobby of marble and crystal. The chandelier above her sparkled like 1,000 tiny suns. At the front desk, she was greeted by name and handed a key card embossed with gold. "Welcome, Miss Taylor. We hope you enjoy your stay." Her suite was on the top floor, with a view that stretched all the way to the sea. There were fresh flowers on the table, a bowl of fruit, and a note from Khalid. "Rest, my dear. Tomorrow, your adventure begins." That first night, Anna wandered the suite in awe. Running her fingers over the silk sheets, the velvet cushions, the polished stone, she took a long bath, letting the water wash away her worries. She tried to sleep, but excitement kept her awake. She imagined Khalid waiting for her. Imagined the stories they would tell their friends one day, how they met, how he swept her off her feet. The next morning, A driver arrived to take her shopping. The car whisked her to a private boutique, where a personal shopper greeted her with a smile. "Mr. Al-Mansour wants you to have anything you desire," she said, gesturing to racks of designer dresses and shoes. Anna tried on gowns she'd only seen in magazines, feeling like a princess. She chose a simple blue dress, but the shopper insisted on wrapping up several more. All compliments of Khalid. Lunch was at a rooftop restaurant, the city spread out below like a glittering carpet. Khalid called her as she sipped her coffee, his voice warm and full of promises. "Tonight, we'll dine together. I can't wait to see you." Anna's heart skipped. She felt special, chosen, as if she'd stepped into a fairy tale. But as the day wore on, small cracks began to show. The driver never left her side, even when she asked for a moment alone. When she tried to call her daughter, the call wouldn't connect. The hotel staff were polite but distant, always watching, always just out of reach. At dinner, Khalid was charming but evasive, steering the conversation away from personal questions. He insisted on ordering for her, choosing her wine, her meal, even the dessert. Anna tried to ignore the unease that crept in. She told herself it was just culture shock, just nerves. She reminded herself of the gifts, the kindness, the dreams they'd shared. But as she returned to her suite that night, the city lights twinkling far below, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. That every step she took was being measured and controlled. She stood at the window, looking out at the city that had seemed so magical just hours before. She wondered if she was being ungrateful, if she was letting fear ruin something beautiful. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered that she was no longer just a guest in this world. She was a possession, a prize, and the walls of her gilded cage were closing in. She had no idea what was coming next. The next morning, Anna woke to a knock at her door. A hotel staff member, polite and efficient, handed her an envelope. Inside was a note from Khalid. "For your safety, please give your passport to the concierge. It's a standard procedure for my guests. I'll handle all the paperwork." Anna hesitated, her fingers tracing the embossed hotel logo. She'd never been asked to surrender her passport before. But she told herself this was just another sign of Khalid's influence. His world was different, his rules unfamiliar. She handed over her passport at the front desk, watching as it disappeared into a locked drawer. "Just for safekeeping," the concierge assured her with a practiced smile. At first, Anna tried to brush off the unease. She filled her days with shopping trips, spa appointments, and guided tours, all arranged by Khalid's staff. But she noticed that she was never truly alone. The driver waited outside every store, every restaurant, every gallery. When she lingered too long in a shop, or tried to wander off the planned route, he would appear at her side, gently steering her back to the car. "Mr. Al-Mansour worries about your safety," he'd say, his tone polite but firm. Anna's phone, once her lifeline, became another source of frustration. Calls to her daughter rarely connected, and when they did, the line was full of static. Texts went unanswered for hours, sometimes days. When she asked the hotel staff about the poor signal, they shrugged and blamed the building's thick walls. Khalid, when she mentioned it, only smiled. "You're here to relax, not to worry about the outside world," he said. "Let me take care of everything." The more Anna tried to reach out, the more isolated she felt. Her friends' messages piled up, unread and unanswered. She tried emailing from the hotel's business center, but the computers were always under maintenance. She began to feel invisible, as if the world outside Dubai had faded away. Khalid's behavior shifted. The charming, attentive man she'd met online became possessive and controlling. He insisted on knowing her every move, where she went, who she spoke to, what she wore. He called her several times a day, his tone growing sharper if she didn't answer immediately. "I worry about you," he'd say, his voice soft but edged with something harder. "You're in a foreign country. You need to trust me." He started to criticize her choices, gently at first, then more openly. "That dress is too revealing for Dubai," he'd say, or, "You shouldn't talk to strangers here. People will take advantage of you." Anna found herself second-guessing everything, her clothes, her words, even her thoughts. She wanted to please him, to prove she could fit into his world. But the pressure was suffocating. One evening, after a tense dinner where Khalid barely spoke, Anna returned to her suite, to find the door ajar. Inside, nothing seemed out of place, but her suitcase had been moved, her belongings rearranged. She called the front desk, but they assured her no one had entered the room. Anna's skin prickled with unease. She started locking her suitcase, hiding her phone, double-checking the door before bed. The days blurred together, each one more claustrophobic than the last. The city that had once seemed so vibrant now felt like a maze with no exit. Anna's world shrank to the hotel, the car, the carefully curated outings. She stopped trying to call home. She stopped asking questions. She told herself she was being paranoid, that Khalid was only trying to protect her. But the truth pressed in on her from all sides. She was alone, cut off, and utterly dependent on a man she barely knew. Khalid's emotional manipulation deepened. He alternated between affection and coldness, praise and criticism. One moment, he'd shower her with gifts and compliments. The next, he'd withdraw, leaving her desperate for his approval. He told her she was lucky, that most women would give anything to be in her place. He reminded her of the life he'd promised, the future they could have. If only she would trust him completely. Anna felt herself slipping, her confidence eroding with every passing day. She tried to remember who she was before all this, but the woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, tired, anxious, afraid. She wondered if anyone would believe her if she asked for help, or if they'd see her as just another foolish tourist who'd fallen for a fairy tale. The walls of her gilded cage had closed in, and Anna realized, with a jolt of terror, that she didn't know how to get out. She was trapped, not by locks or bars, but by fear, by isolation, and by the invisible chains of a man who had promised her the world. It started with a single careless slip. One afternoon, as Anna sat in the hotel lounge, waiting for Khalid, she overheard two staff members whispering in Arabic. She caught her name, her real name, not the one Khalid sometimes used in public. Their eyes flicked to her, then away, as if they knew something she didn't. A chill ran down her spine. She tried to brush it off, but the seed of doubt had been planted. That evening, Khalid arrived late, distracted, his phone buzzing constantly. He barely looked at her as he apologized, blaming business emergencies. Anna watched him, noticing for the first time how he avoided eye contact, how his answers to her questions grew vaguer by the day. When she asked about meeting his family, he changed the subject. When she pressed about his work, he grew irritated, telling her she was being ungrateful. The next morning, Anna woke to find her phone missing. Panic surged through her. She searched the suite, tearing through drawers and suitcases, but it was gone. She called the front desk, but they claimed not to have seen it. Khalid arrived soon after, all smiles, and handed her a new phone. "For you," he said, "so we can always stay connected." The device was sleek, expensive, but when Anna tried to call her daughter, the call wouldn't go through. Every number she dialed was blocked, except Khalid's. That was the moment Anna's fear began to outweigh her hope. She started to notice other things. The way the hotel staff deferred to Khalid. The way her driver never left her alone. The way her every move seemed to be watched. She realized she hadn't seen a single guest in the hotel who wasn't accompanied by someone from Khalid's circle. The luxury that had dazzled her now felt like a trap. Desperate for answers, Anna waited until late one night, when the hotel was quiet, and slipped down to the business center. She tried to use the computer, but it required a password. She asked the night clerk for help, but he shook his head, apologizing in broken English. "Only for business guests," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Anna's mind raced. She remembered the articles her friends had sent, the warnings she'd ignored. She thought about the gifts, the lavish attention, the way Khalid had swept her off her feet. It all seemed so calculated now, so perfectly orchestrated. She wondered how many other women had sat in this same hotel, in this same gilded cage. Believing they were special, the next day, Anna confronted Khalid. She demanded her passport, her phone, her freedom. His face hardened. The warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by something cold and unrecognizable. "You're being dramatic," he said, his voice low. "You're my guest. You should be grateful." When she insisted, he laughed, a sound that sent a shiver through her. "You think you can just leave? You have no idea how things work here." That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She replayed every conversation, every gift, every promise. She realized she knew almost nothing about Khalid. No real last name, no family, no business details she could verify. She remembered the different handwriting on the gift cards, the photos that looked too perfect, too staged. She saw it all now, the illusion, the performance, the trap. The next morning, Anna managed to slip away from her driver for a few minutes. She ducked into a small cafe and borrowed a phone from a sympathetic waitress. She tried to call her daughter, but the call dropped after one ring. She tried to access her email, but her accounts were locked. Panic clawed at her chest as she hurried back to the hotel. She saw another woman in the lobby, her face pale and anxious, flanked by two men in suits. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Anna saw her own fear reflected back at her. She realized, with a sickening certainty, that she was not the only one. This was bigger than Khalid. This was a network, a machine built to lure, isolate, and control. Anna's world tilted. The man she'd trusted, the man who'd promised her the world, was a lie. The love she'd felt was a weapon, used against her. She felt betrayed, foolish, and utterly alone. But beneath the fear, a spark of anger flickered. She would not let them win. She would find a way out, no matter what it took. Anna's hands trembled as she paced her suite, the city's golden lights, mocking her from beyond the glass. She felt the walls closing in, her mind racing with plans and dead ends. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but every path seemed blocked. Her passport was gone, her phone useless, and every staff member she approached seemed to know more than they let on. She was a foreigner in a city where she didn't speak the language, didn't know the rules, and didn't have a single person she could trust. She tried to think logically. To remember the advice she'd given her own daughter about staying safe abroad. She checked her wallet, just a few bills left, not enough for a plane ticket or even a taxi across the city. She considered going to the police, but fear stopped her cold. Khalid had warned her about the strict laws, about how easily things could be twisted against her. "You don't want to get in trouble here," he'd said, his voice soft but menacing. "Foreigners have no rights if they break the rules." Anna's mind spun with stories she'd read. Women detained for minor infractions, travelers trapped by bureaucracy, victims blamed for their own misfortune. She imagined herself trying to explain her situation to a police officer, only to be dismissed, or, worse, accused of something she didn't understand. The thought made her stomach twist with dread. But she refused to give up. She watched the hotel staff, looking for someone who seemed kind, someone who might help. She tried to slip a note to a housekeeper, but the woman only shook her head, eyes wide with fear, and hurried away. Anna realized that everyone around her was either complicit or too afraid to get involved. She decided to try the embassy. She remembered reading that the British consulate was somewhere in the city. She waited until her driver was distracted, then slipped out of the hotel's side entrance, heart pounding. She walked quickly, head down, blending into the crowd as best she could. The heat pressed in on her, sweat trickling down her back. But she didn't dare slow down. After several blocks, she ducked into a small shop and asked the clerk for directions. The man looked at her, then at the two men who had followed her from the hotel. He shook his head, muttering something in Arabic, and Anna felt her hope slipping away. She hurried back onto the street, only to find her driver waiting, his face expressionless. "You shouldn't wander alone," he said, guiding her firmly back to the car. Back in her suite, Anna's fear turned to anger. She refused to let them break her. She searched the room for anything she could use: a pen, a notepad, a hotel brochure with emergency numbers. She wrote down everything she could remember: names, faces, details of her ordeal. She hid the notes in her suitcase, hoping someone would find them if she disappeared. That night, Anna lay awake, listening to the hum of the city and the distant sound of laughter. She felt invisible, powerless, but not defeated. She promised herself she would keep fighting, no matter how hopeless it seemed. She would not let Khalid or his network erase her. She would find a way out, even if it meant risking everything. And as the first light crept over the city, Anna knew she was running out of time. But she was not done yet. Anna waited until the city was deep in the hush of early morning. When the hotel corridors were empty and the staff changed shifts, she dressed quickly, heart hammering, stuffing her notes and the little cash she had into her purse. She slipped on the blue dress Khalid had bought her. Ironic, she thought, that it might help her blend in now. She took a deep breath, opened her door, and stepped into the hallway. Every sense on high alert, she moved quietly, avoiding the main elevator and taking the service stairs down, her footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. At the ground floor, she peeked around the corner. The lobby was nearly empty, just a sleepy night clerk and a security guard scrolling through his phone. Anna forced herself to walk calmly, head high, as if she belonged there. She nodded at the clerk, who barely looked up, and pushed through the revolving doors into the humid Dubai dawn. Outside, the city was waking up. Anna scanned the street for the hotel car, but it wasn't there. She hurried down the block, weaving through early commuters and delivery trucks. She spotted a taxi and waved frantically. The driver hesitated, eyeing her expensive dress and anxious face, but she pleaded, "Please, British Embassy. It's urgent." He nodded, and she climbed in, breathless with relief, as the taxi sped through the city. Anna kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see Khalid's men in pursuit. Every red light felt like an eternity. She rehearsed what she would say at the embassy, praying they would believe her, that they could help. The driver finally pulled up to a gated compound. Anna jumped out, ran to the security booth, and blurted out her story, voice shaking. The guards listened, then ushered her inside. Safe, at last, behind thick glass and locked doors, Anna broke down in tears. She handed over her notes, told them everything: her passport, the gifts, the threats, the other women. The embassy staff moved quickly, contacting the authorities, arranging for her protection. Anna watched the city through the window, her body trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion. She didn't know what would happen next, or if Khalid would ever face justice. But as the sun rose over Dubai, Anna knew she had survived. She had escaped the gilded cage, and for the first time in weeks, she felt hope flicker in her chest. Anna sat in a quiet room at the embassy, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her, staring at the wall as the events of the past weeks replayed in her mind. She was safe now, but her body still trembled, her thoughts tangled in fear and disbelief. The staff spoke gently, offering tea and kind words, but Anna could barely respond. She felt numb, as if she were floating outside herself. watching a stranger's life unravel. When the embassy arranged her flight home, Anna felt a strange mix of relief and dread. She wanted nothing more than to leave Dubai behind. But the thought of facing her family, her friends, and her old life filled her with shame. How could she explain what had happened? How could she admit that she, a grown woman, had been fooled so completely? The questions gnawed at her, making her chest ache. The journey home was a blur. Anna stared out the airplane window, watching the desert fade into clouds, her mind heavy with regret. She replayed every decision, every warning she'd ignored, every moment she'd chosen hope over caution. She wondered if she would ever trust herself again. Back in Manchester, Anna's house felt smaller, quieter than ever. Her daughter hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes, but Anna struggled to meet her gaze. Friends called, some with concern, others with questions she wasn't ready to answer. Anna withdrew, spending days in bed, haunted by nightmares and flashes of panic. She jumped at every unexpected sound, checked the locks twice before sleeping, and avoided looking at her phone. But slowly, with time, Anna began to heal. She started seeing a counselor, someone who listened without judgment and helped her untangle the shame from the truth. She learned to forgive herself, to see her vulnerability not as weakness, but as a part of being human. She began to share her story, first with her daughter, then with a small support group, finding comfort in the knowledge that she was not alone. The scars remained, but Anna was determined not to let them define her. She had survived, and though the road ahead was uncertain, she was ready to begin again, one small step at a time. Anna's first days back home were filled with interviews and paperwork. The embassy had already filed a report, but now it was up to her to tell her story again and again, to the police, to investigators, to anyone who might help bring Khalid and his network to justice. Each retelling was exhausting, reopening wounds she wished would heal. She handed over every scrap of evidence she had. The notes she'd hidden, the emails, the photos of gifts, the names she remembered. The authorities listened, but their faces were grim. They explained the reality. International scams like this were notoriously hard to prosecute. The people behind them were experts at covering their tracks, using fake identities, shell companies, and layers of intermediaries. Even if they could trace the money or the messages, the chances of catching the real mastermind were slim. Anna felt a fresh wave of anger and helplessness. How could someone do this to her, and to who knows how many others, and simply walk away? She learned she was not alone. The police told her about other women, from all over the world, who had fallen for similar schemes. Some had lost money, others their freedom, and all had lost a piece of themselves. Anna joined online forums and support groups, reading stories that echoed her own. The details changed, but the pattern was always the same. A promise of love, a whirlwind romance, and then the slow tightening of control and fear. Anna began to see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one man or one scam. It was a system, a business built on hope and heartbreak, targeting women who wanted to believe in something more. She saw how easy it was to fall, how shame kept victims silent, and how the law struggled to keep up with the speed and reach of modern technology. She spoke out, sharing her story with journalists and advocacy groups. She wanted to warn others, to push for better protections, more awareness, and stronger laws. She knew justice might never come for her, not in the way she'd hoped. But if her voice could help even one woman see the warning signs, if it could spark a change in how these crimes were handled, then maybe something good could come from her pain. Anna realized that the fight for justice was bigger than her own story. It was about shining a light on the dark corners where these predators hid, and refusing to let shame keep anyone else in the shadows. Anna's life would never be the same. But with time, she found a new kind of strength. The scars of her ordeal didn't disappear. but they became reminders of what she'd survived and of what she wanted others to know. She learned to trust her instincts again, to listen to the quiet voice inside that warned her when something felt wrong. She learned that hope is powerful, but so is caution, and that love should never come with secrets or fear. She wanted other women to know that it wasn't foolish to want connection, or to dream of something more. But she also wanted them to see the warning signs she'd missed. The too perfect stories. The sudden gifts, the subtle isolation. She urged them to talk to friends and family, to ask questions, and to never hand over their passport or their trust too quickly. Anna knew now that shame only helped the scammers win. Speaking out, sharing her story, was how she took her power back. Anna's message was simple but urgent. Don't let this happen to you. She encouraged women to be vigilant online, to research anyone who seemed too good to be true, and to reach out for help at the first sign of trouble. She reminded them that they weren't alone, that there were people and organizations ready to listen and support them. In the end, Anna's story was not just about loss, but about resilience. She rebuilt her life, step by step, and found new meaning in helping others avoid the same fate. She became an advocate, a friend, and a voice for those who were still searching for a way out. Her hope was that by sharing her experience, she could turn her pain into a warning, and her survival into a beacon of hope. If you or someone you know is being targeted, don't stay silent. Trust your instincts, seek support, and remember, you deserve love that is real, safe, and true. Don't let anyone take that away from you.